Welcome to a new episode of Dark Nature, the channel where we reveal the mysteries and curiosities of planet Earth. Imagine a place where the ground beneath your feet is literally burning. A place where snow never touches the asphalt because it evaporates before it can even land, and where a thick, toxic white smoke rises from cracks in the road as if the Earth itself were breathing poison. We aren't talking about a post-apocalyptic science fiction scenario. We are talking about a tangible reality in the heart of Pennsylvania. Centralia was once a thriving mining community, a home for thousands of families who trusted their future to the region's black gold, anthracite coal. Today, it is a ghost town sitting atop a subterranean furnace that refuses to die. But how does a vibrant town turn into a permanent exclusion zone? To understand the tragedy of Centralia, we must look back at a human error that triggered an unprecedented geological catastrophe. It all began in May 1962. With the goal of cleaning up the local landfill for the Memorial Day celebrations, the town council made a fatal decision: to burn the trash. What no one measured was that this landfill was situated directly over the opening of an old, abandoned coal mine. The fire didn't stop at consuming the waste. It crawled through the forgotten tunnels, finding a massive vein of anthracite, one of the densest and hardest fuels to extinguish on the planet. That was the beginning of a terrifying chain reaction. The fire turned into an invisible monster that began to devour the mountain's entrails. For the first few years, the residents of Centralia tried to maintain a facade of normalcy. Children continued to play in the streets while, occasionally, smoke billowed from the storm drains. However, beneath their feet, the ground was transforming into a giant, glowing ember. The air in living rooms began to fill with carbon monoxide, a silent, colorless, and odorless killer. Many families would wake up with unbearable headaches, unaware that the mountain was slowly suffocating them from the basements of their own homes. The government invested millions of dollars in desperate attempts to smother the flames. They pumped water into the tunnels, tried to seal the cracks with wet clay, and even dug miles of trenches to cut off the fire's path. But the Centralia fire seemed to have a will of its own. It simply moved deeper, faster, and hotter, mocking every human effort to contain it. It is estimated that the fire consumes about 75 feet of coal vein per year and has enough fuel to burn for another 250 years. Today, walking through what remains of its streets, the silence is absolute, interrupted only by the hiss of steam escaping from the earth. The famous graffiti highway, once the town's main artery, is now a fractured scar painted by thousands of visitors, where the asphalt has buckled and broken under the pressure of internal heat. Houses have been demolished, leaving behind stairs that lead to nowhere and rusted mailboxes that no longer wait for letters. The fire understands neither nostalgia nor ownership. It continues its relentless march, turning a home into a monument of error and the indomitable force of nature. For nearly 2 decades, the people of Centralia lived with the fire as if it were a bothersome but harmless neighbor. They grew accustomed to the smell of sulfur in the morning air and the sight of steam rising from the cracks in the pavement. However, on the morning of February 14, 1981, that dangerous complacency turned into pure, unadulterated terror. A 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was walking through his grandmother's backyard when, without warning, the ground beneath his feet simply disintegrated. It wasn't a typical landslide. The earth collapsed into a 150-foot deep sinkhole, a burning, jagged abyss exhaling lethal clouds of carbon monoxide. Todd managed to save his life by desperately clinging to exposed tree roots until his cousin arrived to pull him from the edge of the void. But the image of that black, smoking hole changed Centralia forever. It was no longer just about invisible gases or strange smells. The mountain had begun to physically swallow its people. This wasn't a slow fire anymore, it was an active geological predator. This near-fatal incident served as irrefutable proof that the abandoned mine shafts were collapsing due to extreme heat, which reached over 500 degrees Celsius near the surface. The very foundation of the town was becoming hollow, a fragile eggshell suspended over a massive, chemical lava nest. State authorities rushed to the scene, and the data they uncovered was even more terrifying than the sinkhole itself. At a local gas station, the owner discovered that the temperature in his underground fuel tanks had spiked to a staggering 77 degrees Celsius. The residents were literally living on top of a massive, subterranean time bomb that could ignite at any second, wiping the entire municipality off the map in a single explosion. As the internal heat intensified, the landscape of Centralia began to die in a haunting, unnatural way. The trees surrounding the town weren't drying out from a lack of water, they were being cooked from the roots up. The lush Pennsylvania woods transformed into a ghost forest, a graveyard of gray, twisted trunks that still stand today like skeletal sentinels guarding a silent hell. Experts warned that as the coal was consumed, it left behind hollow caverns of air that could cause massive, unpredictable sinkholes on any street, at any moment. The uncertainty settled like a heavy fog in the heart of every home. Would your bedroom or your kitchen be the next to plunge into the fiery abyss? Social panic quickly divided the community into two desperate camps. While young families demanded an immediate federal evacuation, many of the elderly, who had spent their entire lives on those streets, refused to leave their roots behind, even if those roots were burning. But nature had already cast its vote. In 1983, the United States Congress allocated over $40 million for the total resettlement of the residents. This wasn't an investment to extinguish the fire, it was a buyout for them to abandon their lives forever. Centralia was officially declared a national disaster zone, and the systematic demolition of the town began, turning a neighborhood into a wasteland to prevent further tragedy. Today, when we look at thermal satellite imagery of the region, we see that the fire hasn't receded an inch. It moves like a slow, relentless tide of fire that requires no external oxygen to survive, extracting it instead from the very fissures of the prehistoric rock. It is a geological entity that has successfully reclaimed its territory. Centralia no longer belongs to the maps of men, it has been swallowed by the geography of fire. Every new crack in the ground is a grim reminder that once you wake the sleeping giants beneath the earth's crust, there is no turning back. Centralia stopped being a town and began to transform into something else, a psychological landscape of abandonment and dread. The constant fog that blankets the area isn't just a weather phenomenon, it's a mixture of natural mountain mist and the never-ending sulfuric steam rising from the underground fires. This oppressive atmosphere served as the primary inspiration for one of the most terrifying sagas in video game and film history, Silent Hill. Just like in the fiction, Centralia is a place where the barrier between our world and a hellish reality seems to have worn thin. The visual parallels are chilling. In the movies, ash falls from the sky like snow. In Centralia, during the height of the fire's intensity, residents reported white flakes of ash settling on their cars and porches, a silent reminder that the earth was burning itself out beneath them. The cracked, buckled roads that lead into the fog-filled canyons aren't just imagery from a screen, they are the literal remains of Route 61, where the heat has warped the asphalt into jagged, impassable waves. To walk through this real-life Silent Hill is to experience a unique kind of sensory deprivation, the smell of rotten eggs from the sulfur, the unnatural warmth of the soil, and a silence so deep it feels heavy. But the horror isn't just visual. Many of the few remaining residents and urban explorers have reported auditory anomalies. In the stillness of the Pennsylvania woods, some claim to hear metallic grinding sounds coming from deep within the mine shafts, sounds that shouldn't exist in an abandoned town. Some describe it as the shifting of the mountain's bones, as the empty tunnels collapse under the weight of the cooling rock. These sounds, combined with the flickering blue light sometimes seen over the vent pipes at night, caused by burning methane, have given birth to legends of the hollow men who supposedly still roam the tunnels, trapped by the fire they once mined. The abandonment was almost total by the early 90s. The United States Postal Service even revoked the town's zip code, effectively erasing Centralia from the official map. It became a non-place, a void in the middle of a modern state. This isolation has attracted a different kind of visitor, those seeking a thrill in the darkness. The graffiti highway became a canvas for thousands, a vibrant, colorful scar that stood in stark contrast to the gray, dead forest surrounding it. But even that has been buried now, covered in mounds of dirt to stop the crowds, as if the state were trying to hide a shameful secret that won't stop smoking. To stand in the center of what used to be a bustling intersection and see only tall grass and scorched trees is a haunting experience. It makes you wonder, if a whole town can be deleted by a single spark in a trash pile, how fragile is the rest of our civilization? Centralia is a reminder that we live on a thin crust over an ocean of fire, and sometimes, that fire decides to come to the surface to remind us who truly owns the earth. As we approach the final part of our journey, we will look at the few holdouts, the brave or perhaps cursed individuals who refuse to leave, and the ultimate fate of this burning ghost town. Does the fire have an end, or has Centralia become a permanent gateway to the abyss? As the sun sets over the poisoned hills of Pennsylvania, we must face the final reality of Centralia. It is a town that has been effectively erased from the physical and legal existence of the United States. In 1992, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania invoked eminent domain on all property in the borough, condemning every remaining building. The state wasn't just asking people to leave, it was legally forcing them out for their own safety. Yet, in the middle of this burning wasteland, a few stubborn souls refused to go. These holdouts fought a decade-long legal battle to stay in the only homes they had ever known, living in a gray world where the mail no longer arrived and the streets had no names. To visit Centralia today is to walk through a glitch in reality. You can find the town's cemetery, sitting on a hill that remains strangely cold compared to the burning valley below. It is a haunting sight, rows of tombstones overlooking a town that died before the people buried there. The irony is palpable, the dead are the only permanent residents left. Those who stayed survived in a landscape of demolition. One by one, their neighbors' houses were leveled, leaving lonely patches of tall grass and cracked concrete pads where families once shared Christmas dinners. These few residents became the self-appointed guardians of a ghost, living with the constant smell of sulfur and the rhythmic sound of the mountain shifting beneath their beds. But the mountain is not done. Experts from the Department of Environmental Protection have monitored the fire's progress for decades, and the data is grim. The fire has moved into the Buck Mountain vein, a massive coal deposit that extends deep into the surrounding hills. There is enough fuel beneath Centralia to keep the fires burning for another 250 years. We are witnessing a slow-motion volcanic event created by human hands. The ground temperature in certain hot spots still reaches levels that would melt lead, and the vent pipes installed to release the pressure look like the chimneys of a subterranean factory, pumping poison into the atmosphere 24 hours a day. In 2020, during the height of the global pandemic, the state took one final step to bury the memory of Centralia. The graffiti highway, which had become a viral tourist attraction, was completely covered under hundreds of tons of dirt. They didn't just want to stop the visitors, they wanted to suffocate the town's last visible artery. Now, where there was color and life, there is only a long, dusty mound. It is the final shroud for a community that refused to stay silent. Centralia is now a place of absolute isolation, a monument to the fact that when we trigger the forces of the earth, we lose the right to call that land ours. As we conclude this journey into the abyss, we are left with a haunting question. Centralia was born from the coal that powered the Industrial Revolution, and it was destroyed by that very same energy. It is a perfect circle of creation and destruction. The fire beneath Pennsylvania is a reminder that we are merely guests on a planet that is alive, moving, and sometimes, incredibly violent. The smoke will continue to rise, the ground will continue to crack, and the memory of Centralia will slowly fade into the mist, leaving behind nothing but a warning for future generations. Thank you for joining us in this deep dive into the shadows of Centralia. This has been a special presentation of Dark Nature. If you felt the heat of the fire through your screen, don't forget to subscribe and share this story. Because in nature, the darkest mysteries are often the ones we create ourselves. This is Dark Nature.